best match, 5-star rating or otherwise, by a terrible wrestler that you've ever seen, and also the worst match by a great wrestler.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, you can't really say, you can drop that down into categories like worst match that maybe anybody ever saw or heard of, because there's so many shows now ever. Johnny Ace was in a bunch of fucking 4-star tag and 6-mans in Japan. Comes to mind. And Ric Flair had a match on, was it pay-per-view or a Clash, that match with the dog?
That was the Clash.
Junkyard Dog. The Clash with the Junkyard Dog when Dog was not in, and I'm not, Dog was a great talent, but not at that point in time in his life because of issues. But it's the same thing now when you look at Ric Flair and Junkyard Dog that said, here's the greatest wrestler in the world in a bad match. But if you looked at that match now compared to some matches on some independents or just, I'm not talking about just guys going 100 miles an hour, but just the average local independent show and some of the guys that get in the ring, all of a sudden Flair and JYD has become Flair and Steamboat in comparison. So maybe it's the time period also. Lou Thez did have some stinker fucking matches back in the 50s, I'm sure, where they sat on the mat for a while because of various reasons. I don't know. What do you think? Who's either been stinky in a great match or was great but in a stinky match? Give me some people.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some people off the top of my head too right now. It's actually a much tougher question than you would think, because also I'm trying to discount, like, I'm not going to put a bad Kurt Hennig match from after, he was already messed up his back and everything, because that's not the same thing.
Well, but then also you've got, when once again manager matches or something like that, or the typical worst match of the year, like Charmel versus that Survivor girl, doesn't count there because it's either has to exceed expectations or somebody in it, and not knocking Charmel. She was the experienced pro there, but somebody in it has to be great. And then on a basis that anybody's ever heard of, maybe it's just eluding us.
I mean, I guess the whole guy who's terrible has a great match thing, that's like Tom McGee territory.
Well, there you go. Bret Hart and Tom McGee, who was never able to replicate that match again because he never worked with Bret again, and pretty much dumbed himself out of position. And it dumbed himself out of position, as the big cat on a lad would say.
Okay, here's one for you, Jim. What is the worst Terry Funk match you ever saw? And also, beyond the JYD match, up until that point, what was the worst Ric Flair match you had seen?
Oh, good. Well, I mean, and then do you count TV job matches where the kid may not have been good, or was it supposed to be a serious competitive match? That's worst Flair match is subjective because there's times he only had 8 minutes on TV to do something with somebody, and it's the same stuff, and blah blah blah, but it's still Flair. What was as far as the worst Terry Funk match? It probably has been within the last couple of years, or not the last time I saw him work, because that was with Lawler, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. But some of his matches that, because I didn't watch a lot of the ECW stuff, which I might be predisposed to dislike just because that's back when they were setting him on fire and shit. I can't say.
And then with Lawler, I mean, I know you've talked about Superstar Billy Graham, but are there other examples where you were sure it was going to be an amazing match and it just did not happen?
No, not really, because I got to the point where by that time where I kind of knew what was going to suck and what wasn't. I was surprised to the positive a couple times. I've mentioned that match he had in Louisville with Ken Lucas when they were starting a program here without benefit of TV to having started it, and they did it in-house, and it just blew everybody away. But, I mean, there were some spot show matches that Lawler worked in those days where it could have been a lot better, but there could have been more people there too. So, I understand now he was picking his spots and everybody, but I can't recall having in Memphis having a big an anticipation, a big build up in my head. This match is going to be great, and having it stink. And part of that's just because if Lawler's working a single match in Cannleton, Indiana against Killer Carl Krupp, you're going to get what you're going to get. But I'd kind of figured out how to ahead of time know what was going to. So that's why sometimes when I was the ring announcer and timekeeper and photographer at these spot shows, if I either knew the match was going to be or the lighting situation wasn't very good or whatever, I would just become the announcer and timekeeper and keep the camera for, in case something happens. So I kind of got to be able to predict when I was going to miss something or not. And as a matter of fact, I was also I was the announcer, the timekeeper, the photographer, and the ringside attendant, as they used to call them up there, because I took the jackets also and the belts. And then also I ran to the merchandise table during intermission and helped sell gimmicks. So I only had 6 jobs.
Did you ever put up a ring?
Thankfully, no. And the reason why is just because it wasn't necessary in those. Here in Louisville, the ring was stored in the Garden's basement, and the Garden's staff, they didn't need to bring a ring crew from Tennessee or anything. The Garden staff, because they put it together and took it down once a week for goddamn, it was part of the building rent, and they got paid to do it, and they knew how to do it, right? Every once in a while, you had to have somebody tinker with the ropes that, like Paul Morton or somebody to make sure it's just right. And in Evansville, it was the same thing. By the time we got there, they already had the thing up on spot shows. Buddy Wayne had a ring, and Ken started driving it and bringing a helper or two, and they would get there earlier in the day. And so, I've carried a few things in and boxes of merchandise and stuff. I didn't avoid the ring crew on purpose. It never actually came up and was not necessary. It was self-contained. I was doing other shit.